Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for having me, and sorry for being a year late with this talk. It was scheduled last year, and I've got a flu or something. So I thought it was better to stay away, which also gave me the chance to mature the software a little bit and present something much more feature complete and ready for prime time today. So I'm going to talk about Prometheus and DNS exporter. Can I switch slides with something this, maybe? Yes. How? Ah, great. So I'm gonna talk about Prometheus and monitoring DNS servers. DNS is something I spend a lot of time on. I run DNS servers myself, and I'm a bit of a DNS nerd, so it's something close to my heart. And also, I really like Prometheus as a monitoring system. I even talked about it on DKNOG 5 years ago. And this project is kind of a combination of my interests. It's kind of the perfect project for me. So I'm going to go through why and what it is and how to use it, and why I think we needed something like this. So my name is Thomas. On the internet I'm called Tykling. I do a bit of everything. I'm a programmer at my day job and do Python mostly. And I'm pretty happy with that. I've also worked at ISPs, done networking and firewall stuff, and I've been a sysadmin and still am. But I'm pretty comfortable writing code. Like I said, I'm a DNS nerd. I've been running uncensored DNS, which is a uncensored DNS service, of course. Recursive, publicly available resolvers since 2009, back before Google DNS and Cloudflare and Quad9 and all the big players that entered the space over the last decade. Uncensored DNS is a non-commercial, almost anti-commercial project, and it currently runs the encrypted protocols, but no longer runs the unencrypted, plain old port 53 UDP and TCP DNS. There was too much abuse, and also I'm a bit of an encryption privacy buff, and I think that the encrypted DNS protocols that have come to light over the last 5-10 years are very nice, and I absolutely would like everybody to use them. So I turned off the unencrypted ones on my own servers, of course. DNS servers are notoriously under-monitored. If you have your own DNS servers, you probably have some sort of monitoring of. Sorry, I'm sweating, it's hot in here. You probably have some monitoring of maybe the load, like how many queries per second and stuff like that, but maybe not more than that. If you have a domain name, like you run some service, and that service is of course entirely dependent on your domain working, often DNS monitoring of that is implicit in that you do an HTTP request to the web server or something, and that implies doing a DNS lookup. So DNS isn't actively monitored, it's kind of monitored as a byproduct, which means that when DNS breaks and your monitoring starts yelling at you, you have to spend time figuring out that it is actually DNS. I know it's always DNS, but you have to spend additional time you don't have figuring out that is the actual problem. DNS is very under-monitored, and I want to fix that. And since I love Prometheus, I wanted something in the Prometheus space to do DNS monitoring well. So, an idea. I had been using a library called DNS Python, which is a very comprehensive Python DNS library. It's a stub resolver, and it can do almost anything you want to do with DNS. And I've been using it for a few projects, and it's a nice, high-quality library. Prometheus has a Python client library that makes it easy to instrument stuff when you are writing Python code. And I thought combining those two and building a Prometheus exporter out of that seems doable. It seems almost easy. It wasn't, but it seemed to be. Blackbox exporter, which is a component released by the same people who do Prometheus and Alertmanager, like the core Prometheus team. They have a component called Black Box Exporter, and it's named so because the recommended way of extracting metrics from stuff is white box monitoring, right? You sit inside the thing and you export from your application, for example, the important metrics. It's called white box monitoring. Black box monitoring is stuff like pinging something or doing an HTTP request or doing a DNS request. It's you're poking something from the outside. It is a black box, effectively. You're just asking it and marking down how long it took. They have the Prometheus project makes Black Box Exporter, which has a few DNS features and can do some of what the DNS exporter can do. And I was inspired to make it Prometheus exporter with an exclusive focus on DNS to support more of the encrypted protocols, which are not currently supported by Black Box Exporter, more response validation, like make sure this response is DNSSEC signed, or make sure that the MX record matches this regular expression, or doesn't match this, stuff like that. So it seemed obvious to write some Python code, which is what I do. So it seemed easy enough. The end result is about 1,500 lines of code, so it wasn't that easy, plus 1,000 lines of unit tests and stuff on top of that. So it took a bit of doing, but it turned out very nice. It is exactly what I wanted, and those of you who know me know I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I do not give up before I get what I want. And I'm very proud to announce that this is the first piece of software. I'm 44 years old. I've never tagged a piece of software with 1.0 before, and I did that this morning with DNS Exporter. So thank you. There's a weird mental barrier about 1.0, right? Because you kind of don't want to go there, because what if I need to change something? Like, but I did it this morning, 7 a.m. or something, and of course I'm bound to find a bug in 10 minutes or something. But anyway, it's out there, and I promise not to change any major things. So if you start building dashboards now, you can expect them to keep working, even though I fix little things here and there. So the DNS exporter. I'm going to go through installing and configuring it. Then I'm going to show some dashboards, tell a few stories about monitoring metrics, and we should be good. Then we're almost on our way to social already. So installing it is easy as with all other Python things. You can install it from pip using pip or whatever you prefer. And if you are the container type, you can use the Docker container, which is also available. It's the same software, it does the same thing, and it is not a hugely complex piece of software. It is very well linted and well formatted and stuff, so 1,500 lines of code is probably more like 500 if the linters weren't so aggressive these days. So running it is easy enough. There's a command, you can run it in debug mode, and you can give it a config file if you need to. Config file is not strictly necessary. It works fine without, but some of the more advanced response validation is too fiddly to put in a query string in HTTP, so you put it in a config file on the server and load it, and then call the module from the Prometheus scrape. Okay, so the DNS exporter is, like the black box exporter, what is called a multi-target Prometheus exporter. For those of you who know Prometheus, usually you configure a scrape job in Prometheus, it goes over HTTP, hits some endpoint, is presented with some metrics in a text format, ingests that in the time series database, and that's it, then you have metrics. I should have brought my phone, I have no idea how much time I have. Thank you. Okay, so you have a scrape job, it hits an HTTP endpoint, gets some metrics. The scrape job scrapes the target directly, usually like you hit your application/metrics endpoint or whatever. A multi-target Prometheus exporter is a design where Prometheus hits the exporter and then asks the exporter to fetch the metrics. And in this case, it's by doing a DNS lookup and returning metrics about it. So what you configure in Prometheus is which DNS lookups to do. Then Prometheus asks DNS exporter to do the lookup, and returns a bunch of metrics about how it went and how long it took and response sizes and stuff like that. So for each lookup you want Prometheus to do, you can configure stuff like query type, query name, you want an A record or a MX record, you want example.com or DKNOG14 or something looked up. You can configure it to use a proxy or use eDNS or padding or configure the timeout. Or if you use DIG, you know there's a shit ton of options for DIG to make it do different stuff with DNS. It's basically the same thing, because while DNS is on paper pretty easy, you do a lookup and get a response back, it is hugely complex under let's talk about the DNS camel and the straw breaking the camel's back, because every RFC is another layer of complexity on top of an already incredibly complex system. So there's a lot of options. Don't let that scare you. Most of them have sensible defaults. There's two settings with no default: the server to ask, like 8.8.8.8 or whatever you want, and the query name, like what are we looking up? It defaults to looking up an A record and defaults to doing it over plain old UDP port 53. Like I said, DNS Exporter supports also TCP and the encrypted protocols, DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS, and DNS over QUIC. And I certainly hope that all the ISP resolvers in here support the encrypted protocols as well. It was actually my intention to use my new NLNOC ring node to poke the Danish ISPs in here's DNS servers and name and shame, but I sadly didn't have time to get that done. So you're safe for now, but I might come back next year. And okay, so you configure your scrape jobs in Prometheus. For this event, I configured, if you go to the DKNOG site and download the presentation, on one of the last slides, there's a link to a publicly available Grafana that you can click around in, and I'm excited to see if my server catches fire when 200 people does that at the same time. But you can go to, what is it called, dnsgrafana.tyktek.dk, or find the link in the presentation, and find the DNS Exporter dashboard where I configured scrapes of DKNOG.dk using a bunch of public resolvers. It's only been running for 24 hours or something, but it's using Quad 9 and Google's DNS and Cloudflare's DNS and uncensored DNS to look up DKNOG.dk, the SOA record and the MX record, and then it registers metrics about it. When you have a lot of stuff, you do the same for DKNOG lookups over IPv4 and over IPv6 for various settings. So you can use all the YAML tricks with anchors and reusing config snippets. And you can also define a configuration file that has most of the settings, and just in your Prometheus scrape config, just refer to the module you defined in the config, and your Prometheus config goes from 10,000 lines to 200 lines. It is highly recommended to do it like that. This is exactly the same thing as Black Box Exporter does, so if you've tried that, then you will be familiar with the concept. So here's three modules, one called TCP, one called TCP-v4, and one called IPv6, and they set a protocol setting and a protocol and a family setting, respectively. So it's just a shorthand for specifying all the options. It has two endpoints. The query endpoint is used to do the actual DNS queries, what we're here for, and the /metrics endpoint is internal metrics for the exporter, like failure reasons and histograms for query timing and stuff like that. The metrics that comes out of this, it's always a bit difficult to wrap your hand around metrics in a text format, so there'll be some screenshots in a bit, but three main metrics per scrape. One is how long it took, DNSX query time seconds. It's 0.12 seconds or whatever it takes. In Prometheus, time series have dimensionality with labels. So these have a bunch of labels, so you can, in Grafana, do a dashboard and say, show me only family IPv4 or only transport UDP or whatever you're interested in. The next one, this top one is set once per scrape. The next one is set once per resort record in the answer. So if you send a NS lookup for root, then you would get 13 NS records, right? Because we have 13 root servers. And then the middle one here would be set 13 times with different labels. It includes all the labels above, plus the Oh, 5 minutes, yeah. Plus a few more resource record specific labels. And then 1 or 0 success, which is the norm in Prometheus exporters. I included them here so you can see the values. It's server is something like DNS.Google port 53 and shows the IP address and everything. It gives you very, very nice filtering possibilities in the dashboards. A bunch of internal metrics is exposed, and be sure to scrape both of them, both the internal and the per query metrics, so you get the full picture in Grafana. The dashboards are, because it's so subjective and so specific what you want to monitor in DNS, some people have DNS servers they run, they don't care about what they look up, they care about how the servers are performing. Other people have domains that are very important to them. They care that these domains are DNSSEC signed and return the right IP addresses and MX records. They don't care that much about what servers. They might just ask public resolvers to make sure their stuff is working. So this is from the official Grafana dashboard, but I expect most people to make their own dashboards inspired by the official ones. So this one shows response time aggregated by various labels, by NSID, by the monitor, the exporter running, by the server being asked, address family, proxy, and protocol. The failure reasons here illustrate very, very nicely that Quad 9 does rate limiting, but only on IPv4. I configured this with 4 or 5 public resolvers, like I said. One of them is Quad 9, and the error rate is almost constant for Quad 9, but only for IPv4. And I'm asking every 10 seconds, so I'm 99% sure I'm hitting a rate limit at Quad 9 over IPv4 and not over IPv6. It's easier to see if you go to the actual dashboard in Grafana than to show this on a screenshot. I'm running out of time. The whole process has been very rewarding, and there's a butterfly effect when you do open source and you start to dig in, especially with new technologies like DNS over QUIC and DNS over the encrypted DNS protocols. I found a lot of bugs, not only in my own code, but also in dependencies and in external stuff. And it's so nice to see the entire open source community slightly improving every time you do something, because you find bugs and you help get them fixed, and you feel nice and they feel nice, and it's all, I really like it. I found a certificate validation thing in the quick code in DNS Python that is being fixed in a dependency of DNS Python. They accidentally append to the CA store rather than replacing it when you give it a custom CA path. So I disabled that functionality for now, and it'll be fixed in a later version. I added a patch for proxy support for DNS Python for the quick protocol, because that didn't work and I needed a small change. I found a DNS dist bug where the encrypted protocol selection, the LPN identifier, wrongly picked the wrong HTTP, the wrong ALPN identifier. And and I got my first pull request. Some dude sent a small fix that makes sure we send content length always. It's so very nice to, and he even said, thanks for putting this tool together. It is exactly what I needed. It is so incredibly rewarding to get those messages. So yeah, so if you use some open source software, be sure to tell the people who made it that you like it. I included some links here. You can find the slides, like I said, on the website, and there's source code and documentation and dashboards and all the stuff you need. That is it, actually. I told you about uncensored DNS. Use it if you want. Come to me if you can run a node. I really need more nodes. And finally, join us at Born Hack. It is always great fun. We don't have time for questions, I think, but I will be here, and please come find me if you want to ask about anything.
We will need to swap out the microphones. Are there any quick questions? We have time for one. Back there. Okay. All the way to the back. And then I'll have to run back to the front.
So you said you needed more nodes. What is required to set up a node?
There's a delay in the answer. Hold on.
Think of a good answer. VM with 4 gigabytes RAM, IPv4 and IPv6, and the ability to announce my prefixes in BGP. So not huge requirements, but the BGP thing is a deal breaker. I need to use my own, but that's it. Okay, well, hit me up if you want to talk DNS or Prometheus or the combination of the two. And thank you, and I'll see you at the social later.